Well, we've heard about past, right? I'm going to tell a story about now, the present, and the future. How many people know a 7-year-old boy?
I do.
Probably everybody. Do they daydream?
Yes.
So this story is about a 7-year-old boy by the name of Peter. And Peter was a daydreamer. At school, Peter would look out the window and imagine playing with his brother, sword fighting with the sticks off of the trees in the backyard. He would imagine being an astronaut, traveling outside the solar system, walking on Mars. He would imagine the trees in the woods near his house being aliens. He had a wild and vivid imagination. He was always daydreaming, and it got him into trouble a lot. So one day, Peter got in trouble at school and he got sent home because he was daydreaming and not paying attention to the teacher. And his mother put him in his room and told him that he had to think about what he had done. Well, he couldn't stay in his room. He was imagining all kinds of silly, crazy things he could be doing instead, and he climbed out the window and went into the woods. And he got into the woods and he was walking around in the woods, again imagining that the trees were aliens from another planet, and he was running all around and got very tired. So he sat down on a patch of grass, and he was so tired that he fell asleep. And pretty soon he heard, "Peter! Peter!" And he woke up to this screeching voice, and it was an old woman. She had to be at least 100 years old. She had white hair that draped all the way down to the floor. It looked like a blanket that was wrapped around her. And he said, "Yes?" And she said, "I have a gift for you." And she reached into her pocket and she pulled out a ball. And the ball had a hole in the middle of it, and out of the ball, from that hole, was a long golden thread. And she said, "Peter, this thread is the thread of your life. All of this part that's out of the ball are the 7 years that you've already lived. And the rest of your life is inside. And this is a very special ball because if you get bored and you want to see what's happening in the future, all you have to do is pull the thread and you will be transported quickly into the future. Moments, hours, and days will turn into moments. Weeks and months will turn into an hour or so. And years, they'll go by like that." Well, Peter didn't really believe this, but he put the ball into his pocket. He thought that was a pretty cool toy. Well, the next morning at school, he was bored and just his imagination was going crazy. And then he remembered the ball in his pocket. So he pulled it out, and underneath his desk, he thought, "Let's see if it works." And he tugged on the string just a little, and just like that, he was in the backyard, and Mom was calling him in for dinner. The whole day had gone by. He thought that was pretty cool. So the next day, when he got to school, the teacher told them they had a math test. And Peter thought, "Oh no, I'm not doing this. Let's see if it works." So he pulled out the ball from his pocket, and under his desk, he pulled out the thread a little further, and all of a sudden, it was Saturday morning, and he was watching television, cartoons. He thought this was pretty cool, a lot of fun. He's going to have to think about how else he can use this thing. Well, Peter, daydreaming all the time, was thinking about what his life might be in the future and what it might be like to be a teenager. And pretty soon, he decided to use the ball and see if he could transport himself into those teenage years. So he pulled the string a little farther than he had ever before, and poof, he was a teenage boy with a pretty cool car and a beautiful girlfriend named Elise. Well, Peter thought that was pretty cool to be a teenager, and he had a lot of fun for a little while, but then he kept thinking about what it would be like to go to college, and after college, what the future would hold. He was always thinking about the future. He never had time to enjoy what was happening right then and there. He was always daydreaming about what would happen tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, and the next year, and the next year. So after a while, Peter was bored with being a teenager, and he wanted to find out what life would be like later. So he went into his sock drawer, and he pulled out the ball, and he pulled it a little further. And all of a sudden, he was middle-aged. He was sitting on a couch. His wife, Elise, was standing there. His mom was standing there helping her because guess what? There were 5 kids on the floor, 2 dogs and a cat. And Peter looked across the room, and there was a mirror, and he almost didn't recognize himself because his dark hair was now starting to gray around the edges. And Peter started thinking about his life, and boy, he had taken over his dad's restaurant, and he was busy working all the time. And he just wanted to be retired. He wanted this crazy full life to be done, this part of it, and he wanted to enjoy his life. And he knew that he'd be able to enjoy it if he got to retirement. So he decided to take out that ball again. So he took out the ball and he pulled the string really far, and all of a sudden, he was 80 years old. 80 years old. All those years had passed. He saw it all pass quickly in front of his eyes. Well, here he was alone in his house, just a few miles from the house he was raised in. His kids were grown, and they had kids of their own, and some of them even had kids. But Peter was all alone in his house. He couldn't imagine what the future would hold anymore, and so he started to have regrets that he wasn't able to take his kids fishing, that he hadn't had a chance to walk under the stars with Elise. See, she had passed away a few years before that. That he really hadn't had a chance to enjoy his life. He hadn't had a chance to do all those things he wanted to do as he was growing up. So he was really sad. And so he decided to take a walk. And he got out his cane and he started to walk the couple of blocks to the woods that he used to play in as a child. And those small saplings were all of a sudden mighty oaks, and the woods were a forest. As he walked through very slowly, he started looking around, and it didn't feel like the same place, but he got kind of tired, and he found a patch of grass, and so he sat down on the grass and leaned back and closed his eyes. And pretty soon he heard, "Peter, Peter!" And he thought, "Oh no, I've heard that before." And he opened his eyes, and lo and behold, it was that same old woman. And she said to him, "Peter, did you like the gift I gave you?" And he said, "Well, at first I liked it, but not so much anymore, because my whole life went by me. It went by in a flash, and I didn't get a chance to enjoy it. I never got a chance to take my kids fishing. I never got a chance to take Elise on the cruise I said I was going to take her on. I never got a chance to do all those things I daydreamed about. All of my life, it just went by in a flash. I never got to enjoy my life. In fact, I feel kind of empty inside, and I'm really sad, and now my life is over." And the old woman said, "Peter, I'll tell you a secret. It's never too late to change. I'm kind of disappointed that you didn't use this gift to your best advantage. But you know, it really is never too late to change. So I think I'll give you one chance, one wish. Is there one thing that you'd like to have?" And he said, "You bet. I'd like to be 7 years old again." And she said, "Well, all right." And she waved her hand, and Peter fell asleep. Pretty soon he heard, "Peter, Peter, get up, no dilly-dallying, it's time to go to school." And Peter opened his eyes, and his mom was standing right there, young and vibrant, and he thought, "Wow, it worked, I'm 7 years old again." And so he jumped out of bed, he got ready for school, took off, and on his way to school, he reached his hand into his pocket, and out came the ball, with the golden thread just about this long. And he heard in his mind, in his head, "It's never too late to change."